Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 4 in the mining topic sequence for Year 8 Humanities. What I'd like you to do in your books is, you don't have to print this out necessarily, but if you just put 3 subheadings, what can you see, what can you infer, and what questions do you have from this image? And I'd like you to write at least 3 to 5 things under each of those subheadings about this photograph. So pause the video here a moment, go ahead and do that please. Okay, so what we've actually got going on here, this is a photo taken from above. It's a photo of a village called Aberfan. Now Aberfan is a mining town. You can see there's lots of rows of quite close together terrace style houses here. There's been coal mining going on in this area for many years, and they were piling the waste material up on the side of the valley. The problem was that underneath the waste material there is a spring. Now a spring is, sometimes it runs deep underground or close to the surface or on the surface. It's basically another word for a stream. Okay, so there was a small stream sort of running underneath where this waste heap had spread out across. And then one day there was really heavy rainfall in the area, and this caused all of the waste material to become very wet. So the spring underneath and the rainfall from above caused the soil to become saturated. That means super full of water. It can't absorb any more water. So all of the waste material was very wet. And what happened was it then slid down onto the village below, as you can see here. Hundreds of tons of waste, coal dust and mud and slurry just slid down onto the village. And as you can see, it's covered several houses, and disastrously it covered a school at about 9-10 o'clock in the morning, when all the children were in the school building and the teachers. This is a very famous mining disaster called the Aberfan disaster. So pause the video here a moment, go ahead and write down today's title, and we'll get started. Oh, I've just realised I haven't changed the aims on here from the last video. What we're actually going to do is watch a documentary about the Aberfan mining disaster, and then you're going to use your empathy skills to talk about what it would have been like there on the day to be involved in what happened. So here are some photographs of the immediate aftermath of what happened. As you can see, just utter devastation in the village. And this was a time, this isn't fully modern day. There wasn't the super rapid response high-tech rescue equipment that we have now. There were a lot of people still trapped in the rubble for quite some time. You see some school children here waiting to see who might get pulled from the rubble alive or dead, not knowing what has actually happened to their families, praying for help and praying for some people to be pulled out alive still. Here's some of the miners that had gone to work that day and just couldn't quite believe what had happened. You can see the devastation. This is the edge of the school building here. People trying to dig into what was the main school hall, where lots of the children had come together for the assembly. And then there were actually so many people killed in this disaster, teachers, children, and normal working adult age members of the village population. The mortuary, a mortuary or a morgue is where you send somebody after they've passed away for processing and for all the organisations and things to be done and made for funerals. The local morgues and mortuaries couldn't cope. There were just too many people, too many bodies. So they were buried in mass graves like this, and they just had one huge ceremonial funeral all together after the disaster. About a week, 10 days later, had a mass funeral. And this is what it looks like today. Row upon row of graves to commemorate the people that passed away that day. So, in the documentary that you're going to watch next lesson, and in the images that I'm about to show you this lesson, you might come across some words you're not sure of. Colliery spoil, this is the waste material from the mine. A spring, like I said, is in a small stream. If something is impermeable, like a type of rock sometimes is impermeable, this means it won't let anything pass through. Nothing can soak in. So the water from all the extra rainfall that day couldn't soak in. And the other reason it couldn't soak in was the soil was completely saturated. It had rained so much. So if you're not sure of any of these, pause the video here a moment and write them down in your books, please. Okay, so what we're going to do is create a storyboard to explain the causes of the Aberfan disaster. So I'm going to walk you through 6 stages of what happened, and you're then going to draw 6 diagrams or pictures with some little explanations in your own words to explain what caused the disaster. So this picture is taken from above. So that photo I showed you at the start, in fact, if I flick right back. Okay, so we've got the village here, and the valley side with the waste tip on it behind. If I come through to here, what we're looking at is the village with the valley side behind it, and there's the waste tip. Okay, so it hasn't slumped down onto the town yet like it had in that photo. So you've got lots of spoil heaps here, and they're all numbered, and they are roughly kept an eye on. Okay, so up on the mountainside, you've got several spoil tips. I think there's actually 9 of them. And it was spoil tip 7 that they were monitoring particularly closely because the spring runs underneath it. The stream runs underneath the edge of spoil tip 7. And here's your other spoil tips. There's forestry around the mountainside here, and another river and road at the bottom here, and then the village at the bottom of the hill. So that was the picture we were just looking at. So to give you an idea, if I cut down through the middle of this picture and we were looking at it sideways on, that's called a cross section. And what you'd see sideways on is the spoil tips look like this. And underneath the spoil tip, there is a layer of permeable sandstone. Permeable means that when it rains, the rainfall can soak into the ground and drain away underground. Impermeable rock, water cannot soak in any deeper than this. It will not let rainfall soak deeper into the soil than that level there. Okay? So what had happened was there was a lot of heavy rain for several days before the disaster, and it had soaked through the spoil tip and through the permeable sandstone, saturating all of the spoil tip and saturating all of the sandstone. So this was now full of water and very unstable, and it couldn't drain away any further down because this layer is impermeable. It will not let anything soak in. Step 3, what then happened is there was a 3-meter slump. Okay, at about 7:30 on the 21st of October in the year that this happened, I forget when, I'd have to look it up actually, there was a bit of a slump. And the miners working at the tip at the time noticed this. There'd been an almost 10-foot drop, 3-meter drop in spoil tip 7 overnight. And they were a bit concerned about that. But there was no phone line to the office. So a worker went down the mountain on foot to report the problem. But by the time the order was given to stop chucking more waste on the tip, it had sunk another 6 meters. So things are getting seriously unstable. 7 in the morning, after lots of rain, they notice a 3-meter slip. 2 hours later, 9 in the morning, they notice another 3-meter slip. So the spoil tip has slipped by about 6 meters by this point, but there's no phone line to get a message from up here where the miners are working, still tipping waste onto the tip from the mine. There's no way to get a message by phone from here down to the main office at the bottom of the slope in the other part of the mining buildings. So they've sent someone down on foot. But it didn't happen quick enough. 15 minutes later, the tip gave way, and this whole section of tip 7 slumped down and covered an entire street and school in Aberfan. So, was this a natural disaster, or could this have been avoided? Was it man-made error? Humans went about dumping all the waste from the mine on the valley side. Number 1, that's a pretty steep slope. Number 2, where you decided to dump it, there was a spring running underneath tip 7. You then had really heavy rain for a few days, and when you came into work on the 21st of October, spoil tip 7 had slumped by about 3 meters at 7 in the morning. And you were like, this doesn't look good. I'll send someone down the mountainside to go and report it, because we don't have a phone. Only 2 hours later, the tip has slumped another 3 meters. So you've got a 6-meter slump. This isn't looking good. The warning signals are there. But the guy on foot couldn't make it down the valley mountainside quick enough to get the warning to the village. And at 9:15, so 2 hours and 15 minutes after they noticed the first 3-meter slump, just 15 minutes after they noticed a further 3-meter slump, tens of tons, probably a few hundred tons of this spoil tip slid down onto the town of Aberfan. And you can see the area that it covered here. So there's the road, which is that bit there, that black line there, railway, sorry. Okay, and it came all the way across here, covered this entire street here, and Pantglas Primary School. 2 farmhouses, disused canal and railway, and destroyed a school and 18 more houses. It killed 144 people. And they either would have been crushed by the debris of the building being destroyed around them, or they would have suffocated. This would not have been a nice way to go. Some of them actually drowned because there was so much water saturated in the soil and the mud and the waste that slumped down that some of them drowned if they didn't suffocate or were crushed by the building collapsing around them. So there's the 6 stages that I've just walked you through. Okay, what I'd like you to do across a double page in your book, or it's up to you how you lay it out, but basically 6 pictures with 6 explanations in your own words. Okay, you don't have to do super complex versions like this. All right, use them to make your own versions of what happened into here. Okay, so this is nothing's gone wrong yet. Soil tip has been created on the mountainside in the valley next to the Aberfan town. You could then talk in here about the heavy rainfall over the few days and how it saturated the soil, and then maybe you've got the first 3-meter slump here and they've sent someone down the hillside to give warning, but then there's the second further 3-meter slump here and the person hasn't got to the village to give warning yet when 15 minutes later the slump happens and destroys a school and 2 streets and kills 144 people. Okay, so visualize your own versions of what happens. Re-listen to the explanations I've just given and use these to help you. Basically create a 6-point storyboard about the causes of the Aberfan disaster, please. Okay, and that brings us to the end of lesson 4. What we're going to do next lesson is watch a full documentary about the disaster to really understand what happened and put ourselves into the shoes of the people that were there that day. And we're going to write a diary entry. So we're going to be using our empathy skills and imagination, emotive language, adjectives, and so on. So I'll see you soon for that lesson.